Hello, friends. Welcome back to Fenny for the Soul for the first story of 2025. It's going to be a pilot story, and I'm going to introduce you to our uncle, Wing Commander Chandrasekar, who is all of 91 years young. Wing Commander Chandrasekar, who is married to our maternal aunt, Lily, has been an exemplary pilot. So we are going to be speaking about the time when in the Air Force he safely landed a Canberra bomber aircraft with a trainee pilot on board when one of the engines had failed. Also, the time when he was chased by a Pakistani jet during the 71 operations and had a very close shave. The time when he transited from Canberra bomber aircraft to passenger aircrafts, the Boeing 707s and the jumbo jets of the Air India, that time. And also how he trained 30-something pilots when he was 86 years young, as in just 5 years back, with the Air India in the flight simulators. So it's an exciting journey. So I welcome you to Wing Commander Chandrasekhar's cockpit.
So good afternoon, Chandu Bappa. I am going to quiz you about your exciting and long flying career. So the very first question really is, I remember you telling us about early 1970s incident where you were training a young pilot on the Canberra bomber in Pune, and there was a malfunction, and you landed the aircraft safely. Just tell us a little about that incident.
Okay, 1972, when I was in Pune and in Squadron 35 Squadron, and I was training pilots on the Canberra aircraft. It's a 2-engine aircraft and very nice aircraft to fly. And I was training this guy on making one-engine approaches, for landing on one engine, and the guy was so high on the final approach and going down, we were almost 300 feet over the landing dumbbell. So I asked this guy, what are you going to do now? I'm going round, sir, he says. And he pushed both the engine, because we don't shut down the engine of the other engine. He just bring the power back. And he pushed it so fast that that engine flamed out means it went dead. And here we were sitting on one engine, low speed, with the flaps fully down, which if you are fully down, it creates a lot of drag.
Okay.
And the speed was very low. So the only way I could get out of this situation is took over control, asked him to raise the flaps.
Yeah.
We raised the flaps, and when you raise the flaps, the aircraft starts sinking down. And it went so far down that we were almost at ground level at the end of the runway. And we carried on with a low speed with no height. I couldn't go any further down. It was so low that I had used a lot of rudder to keep the aircraft straight. And gradually I manipulated with the live engine, pushing it up and down, because we were at a low speed, slowly gathered speed. And once I gathered speed, went up and carried out a one-engine landing.
A one-engine landing. So, Chandrababa, I come to the other thing. During the 1971 Indo-Pak War, you were flying the Canberra interdictors, and the interdictor bomber, and you had a near, your close shave, so to say. And so tell us a little about how, because the Pakistani jet was on your tail. Yeah.
This was a mission to one of their targets that we were given.
Yeah.
And the Canberra doesn't have any protective radar to tell us if we are being chased by enemy aircraft.
Okay.
Which is why we had to be very low. Otherwise the radar will pick us up the moment we fly. So I finished this bombing run and immediately started going down over the Arabian Sea. And we usually fly about 500 feet above the Arabian Sea to avoid the radar catching it up, the Pakistan radar. And at some point we had to start climbing up because at low level the aircraft consumes a lot of fuel. Just short of Jamnagar coast to come back to Pune.
Yeah.
As I was climbing through 5,000 feet, I got this message from my good friend who was the AOC, Air Officer Commanding Jamnagar, Air Commodore Peter Wilson.
Okay.
He was a good friend of ours going back to Agra days, and he said, "Get down, Chandru, get down." So I immediately got down, got into a spiral back to 500 feet above the Arabian Sea. After some time I asked him, going towards Pune at 500 feet, "Can I climb now, sir?" He said, "Yeah, you're clear now. You can climb up." So I climbed up and then proceeded to Pune, landing there with near zero fuel in the aircraft. 2 days later, I did a similar flight, but on the way out for bombing sessions, we would always land in Jamnagar airport to get a refueling. And while I was refueling, I would always meet with Air Commodore Pete Wilson. That day when I met him, I said, "What happened day before yesterday, sir?" He said, "Chandru, if you had delayed coming down to safety at 500 feet, I wouldn't be talking to you." So, he says there was one Pakistan Air Force Lockheed 104 which was chasing you, and if you are delayed going down to the deck level, he would have got you with this sidewinder missile.
With the sidewinder missiles, So that was a real close shave.
Absolutely.
So Chandru Bappa, now I'm going to move from the Indian Air Force to Air India. So 1976 you joined Air India, and suddenly from Canberra bombers you are now going to be flying passenger aircraft, and Boeing 707 I think was your first aircraft. What was this experience of now taking passengers on commercial flights?
Actually, once you're in the cockpit, I think all aircraft, whether single engine or twin engine, you concentrate on the flying and all the procedures, etc., that goes with flying these big aircraft. And of course, the most important thing when you join in a civil airline is that you got a crew with you in the cockpit. So you got to coordinate with them also. So the Boeing 707 had a crew of 4 people in the cockpit.
Wow.
Captain, co-pilot, navigator, flight engineer.
Wow.
So you got to maintain coordination. You can't keep yelling and shouting. That is the difference between the Air Force and civil aviation. In Air Force, discipline meant you could yell at a guy and get the job done. Here, you got to be very diplomatic. And yet, follow the rules and regulations to the point.
Wonderful.
So, in civil aviation, you got to stick to your rules because you don't have a free sky to fly. It's a restricted flying zone. Unlike the Air Force, you can throw the aircraft around, you are in no problem climbing or descending. Here you are restricted to that point from A to B. You got to maintain your position.
Your height and position.
Height and position. And that is one in the cockpit. Also you had the cabin crew to attend to you. So you got to be polite with them. You can't be, harsh and order things. So you don't order in civil aviation. You have to be firm but be polite. That is the biggest lesson.
And the difference also. Nice. So finally, I want to conclude by you had a long innings as a flight simulator instructor in Air India, and I am happy to tell the audience that they retained you till young age of 86. So just pre-COVID, 2019, you worked right up to 2019 as a flight simulator instructor. That's quite fascinating. So how was it to train 30-something pilots? How was that experience?
There was a difference between training pilots who are purely they've got their license, etc., in the civilian way. Where you get the civilian license to fly these aircraft.
Yeah.
Whereas we had another set of people like myself,
Yeah.
with the Air Force background,
Yeah.
we had to change over to the civilian license,
Yeah.
what is called the ALTP, Airline Transport Pilot's License. You have to get.
Yeah.
So that was the main difference between flying, coming from the Air Force and flying these aircraft. So when these guys come to get the training in the simulator, we had two distinct difference between civilian pilots being trained and the Air Force pilots being trained.
Okay.
And so you got to be careful and tell these Air Force pilots, they all come, the Air Force pilots especially, would come with plenty of experience
Yeah.
in their flying,
Yeah.
and they were the ones the most difficult to train, because they would question you because of their own experience in flying.
Yeah.
And so you had to be very, very diplomatic and train these guys.
Yeah.
Fortunately, except for one particular Air Force guy, he was a group captain who joined Air India and I was training him. He's the only one at the end of the session, he says, "Sir, I would like to change the instructor." That was the shock to me in all my life, because I've been an instructor from 1964 in the Air Force.
Wow.
And I've trained in all the types of aircraft that I've flown.
Yeah.
And here's a guy, after all those years, who turns around and he says, "I don't want to be instructed by you."
Wow.
So that was a real hit on my head. It changed my attitude also.
Oh, wonderful. But you mean that was also a learning for you?
Yeah, it was a learning.
Amazing. Yeah, that's fascinating. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.